but I want to be able to decide two bearing lines. They could coincidentally be very, very horizontal and very vertical, almost making a perfect cross. That happened close in the baby portrait for the portrait series. But one of the things that I've mentioned several times is this is a great opportunity for me to establish the tilt of a head, to be able to see the eye alignment. And I often like the eyes because it's such an important part, and there's so many aspects of the eye that I can use as a reference point that it's really nice to be able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and run a line through from outer corner to outer corner of this reference with my white pencil because I think you'll be able to see it a little better. This is my Prismacolor with the wax. And so here we have one going through the eyes, and this is going to be far more prominent than I want you to do because I need to make sure it shows up for you, otherwise you won't even know what in the world I'm doing. And so now I'm going to find what we'll call the vertical bearing line. And even though it might be at an angle, because I'm going to kind of take an advantage of finding where a center line would be on her face. So let's go ahead and use her teeth as one anchor point, and I'm going to try to just kind of go in between her eyes. May not be perfect, but it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, because we can use whatever information we have as an advantage when we're drawing out our drawing. So now, see, I've run it right through the teeth. I'm trying to find something. It doesn't have to be the teeth for you. It could be maybe the corner of the mouth, or it could be, something that you can well establish. Maybe it's the side of the nostril here. If it has a clean edge and is well identified, that's really an advantage. So I suggest that you just take a look and see what's going to be the best advantage, what you're going to be able to see clearly, and not have something nebulous out here that you really can't define. Although every time I put a dot on my drawing, I can duplicate that on my, when I put a dot on my reference, I can duplicate that on my drawing. And that's one of the great opportunities I have to even create a bearing point that wasn't even there. There wasn't even any detail there. So now what I'm going to do is I want to take this and I'm going to now decide where I want it for placement on my paper. So let's go ahead and back out again. And this is really important to me because I don't like running off the sides of my paper, and I don't like having my drawing all shifted over to one side. I want to try as best I can to place it in the proper position. Something that's going to be nicely centered, or if I have somebody that is looking from another side, I may want to have a little more space to where they're looking. But anyway, I want to be able to have a good placement on here and not run out of room, not have my drawing running off the edge of the paper, not having planned it. And I also would probably work, if I was going to be doing a portrait on this, I'd probably be working on a larger sheet. Maybe it's the 19 by 24 size, because I like to have plenty of forgiveness around the edge. If I end up by doing something different, I can add something. I can go ahead and actually maybe I miscalculated, and I have plenty of room to trim it or frame it out and all those things. But let's go ahead and now put that in the center just as a placement. We've found our horizontal, we'll call it, even though it's diagonal, and our vertical bearing lines. And now this intersection here is what is really important. I want to know where that is, because that's going to end up by being a key point for us to play off of. There's going to be other ones that are going to develop as we go. But I can go ahead and just kind of generally do this. I don't have to measure it. If it's really critical for you to measure it, that's fine. But here's our dot. Now, if I want to duplicate that, all I have to do is put this on the outside of my paper and or the inside. But in this case, I want on the outside because I want to be able to run a line all the way through my paper at precisely the same angle as this. And you see it's at an angle. It's not level. And that's really important. And it's also extremely important, just critical, for me to keep this reference always in the same orientation of the paper. That means we don't do it like this. We don't let it slip around. We want to always be checking to see if it's really parallel. Because every time one of my angles gets a little bit off, and I try to build off of whatever I intersected out here somewhere, it's going to multiply. And that isn't going to be accurate for me to use for something else, and for something else, and for something else. So now let's go ahead and take our straight edge. And if you have an acrylic one, it's really ideal, I think, because I don't know how often I find that I want to be able to see the placement of the ruler or the straight edge, and I can't if it's solid quite as well. It just raises a question. So now, see, look at how nice that is. I can actually establish this. I can anchor it down. I don't have to worry about the ruler moving or the straight edge. And there's enough space because of the same thickness used as a base for the print. And the print is on top of it, so it raises the level of this ruler up just high enough that I can go ahead and I can actually have no friction, and I can go ahead and bring this down parallel with the edge of the paper until it meets that dot. Now I should have. It meets that center bearing line that I placed there with my finger. So what do? My ruler isn't long enough. This is one reason why I really encourage you to get at least an 18-inch ruler. I know this, if anything longer, 2 foot, could really become quite cumbersome, but still, I like to be able to have at least an 18-inch. If you're working with a foot, then you're constantly going to have to be moving it around. But now, I'm going to make this darker, remember, because I'm working on camera, and it's very difficult for all of you to see. But if I was doing this for my real portrait layout or any drawing layout, I would want to make sure that I'm doing it lightly with my 4H. And I want to always make sure I'm dragging my pencil so that the point is pointing away from where it's going instead of pushing it, because that point on the pencil will have a tendency, more than you think, to damage the paper in a way that you can't get the line off. And so very lightly, so I could see it, I would take my 4H and I would just drag it through there. Now let's go ahead and establish this one. This is going to be a little bit harder for you to see because of the length of the paper. But this is, again, going to be right up next to this other drawing paper. The reference is going to be right up next to it, completely parallel with the edge. I could use any side. It wouldn't make any difference. But now I'm going to come up here, and my ruler isn't long enough, but I'm matching it up. I'm just moving the paper, making sure it's totally parallel with my reference until I match up on that bearing point. I'm going to duplicate this intersection here in the middle of my drawing. Okay, now because my ruler isn't long enough, I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. I don't like to extend lines because sometimes it gets a little harder to match it up than you might think.